Do you want to know how to get amazing family photos without having to lug along a big professional camera? In this video, I'm going to show you how to take better vacation photos with just your iPhone, so keep watching. If you're new to Top Flight Family, my name is Carmen, we're the Sognonvi family, and we are all about inspiring families to travel the world together in comfort and style. We share tips on how you can save time, reduce hassle, and maximize comfort when you travel with kids. If that sounds good to you, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next video. Also be sure to follow us on Instagram at Top Flight Family. One thing that drives photographers crazy is when people are like, wow, your photos are so good. What kind of camera do you use? Taking good photos is much more about the technique than having the best gear. So instead of rushing out to buy an expensive new camera, you should learn how to use the one you already have to its maximum potential. And if all you have is an iPhone, that's fine. iPhone cameras these days are pretty amazing. For most of our trips, we'll hire a photographer to take photos of our family, but there are also plenty of times that we supplement those photos with ones that we take on our own. Confession, I actually don't own a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, so all of these other photos are taken on our iPhone. Along the way, I've picked up some tips and tricks to take better iPhone photos. One quick note before we begin. Not every photo you'll see in this video was actually taken on an iPhone. Now, that's not me trying to be deceptive, it's just that I don't always have a sample iPhone photo available to illustrate each particular tip I'm sharing in this video. So in the interest of explaining as clearly as possible, I may include samples that were taken on a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, but that said, all of the principles I share in this video can absolutely be applied to your iPhone photos. Okay, so let's get started with some basic photography principles. I will get into the features of the iPhone itself and some hacks that you can use to get those epic shots. But first, let's talk about the general principles that will help you get better photos no matter what type of camera you're using. Principle number 1. Keep it simple. If your photo has too many details, it's going to distract the viewer. So try to stick to one interesting subject and avoid anything that's got just too much mess in the scene. For most family vacation photos, the subject will be, of course, your family. This could be the entire clan, just one person, or smaller groupings of just 2 or 3 people. Or if you're taking a photo of an attraction, like a church, then that is the subject. When you're framing your shot, be aware of things that may distract from your subject, and just reposition so that those distractions don't enter the frame. Also, don't be afraid of empty space, or as the pros call it, negative space. Less can really be more. Principle number 2. Use the rule of thirds. One very basic composition rule that's going to help you get better pictures is the rule of thirds. Imagine that there's a 3x3 grid over the top of the scene in front of you that you'd like to capture. You should position the important elements in your scene along those grid lines or at the points where the lines intersect. Studies have actually shown that people's eyes usually go to one of these imaginary intersection points of any photo, so using this rule is going to result in a much more balanced picture. With your iPhone, you don't have to just imagine this grid and hope that you're lining everything up according to the rule of thirds. In your camera settings, you have an option to turn on the grid. This divides your viewfinder into thirds and makes composing a more pleasing image absolutely foolproof. Principle 3. Use leading lines. Photos look better with some depth, and that's especially important if you're shooting landscapes. When you use the shoreline, railroad tracks, roads, fences, or any other type of paths, there are lines in the picture leading from the foreground to the background, and that instantly creates depth. So look for leading lines like these to get a really engaging shot. Principle number 4. Shoot during golden hours. Golden hour is the time right around sunrise or right around sunset, and you get the best lighting at this time of the day. There's a soft glow at those times that can really transform a setting. The same exact location can look totally different in photos taken at different times of the day, so do a little experiment to see it for yourself. Sunrise is really the ideal time to shoot because there's more favorable lighting, plus there are usually fewer people around. But if you're traveling with kids, it might be a little bit hard to get out of the door that early, so try to arrange your itinerary so that on each day you are hitting the most Instagrammable location right before sunset. So those are some of the basic photography principles you should keep in mind, no matter what kind of camera you're using. Now let's talk about some of the features that are specific to the iPhone and how they can help you get better vacation photos. Feature number 1. Set your focus manually. Sure, the iPhone has automatic focus, but that doesn't always mean that it's focusing in on the thing that you want it to focus in on. On your iPhone, you can set the focus manually by tapping the screen where you want it to focus. You'll see a yellow box appear. Whatever is in that box will turn out crisp and clear. Easy as that. By the way, if you'd like to get a free copy of my guide, 25 travel photography tips for non-photographers, just go to topflightfamily.com/photo and enter your email address, and I'm gonna link that down below as well. Okay, here's another strategy for getting professional looking photos on your iPhone. Feature number 2, adjust the exposure. Again, exposure is something that the iPhone also does automatically, but its defaults are not always the best in every situation. When you adjust the exposure manually, you'll ensure that your photos don't turn out too dark or too bright. All you have to do is tap the area you want to focus on, then swipe up to brighten the image or down to darken it. There are a few situations where over or underexposing is necessary for artistic effect, like when you're creating a silhouette in front of a sunset, for example. But most of the time, you'll want to make sure that your subject isn't too dark or too bright. Feature number 3, turn on HDR. HDR stands for high dynamic range. Using it will ensure that your photos are evenly lit in situations where there are a lot of detail in both the shadows and the highlights. To turn HDR on, open your iPhone Settings app and select Camera. Check to see that Smart HDR or Auto HDR is switched on. If you'd rather control HDR manually, switch it off in Settings and tap the HDR icon at the top of the camera app whenever you want to shoot HDR photos. Feature number 4, experiment with all 3 modes: photo, portrait, and pano. Each of these camera modes on the iPhone does something different, so why not try them all? You probably only ever use photo mode, which takes the most basic pictures, but you really should check out portrait mode, because this is when it focuses on the main subject while softly blurring the background in a way that you normally can only get from using a quote-unquote real camera. Pano mode allows you to shoot wide panoramic shots that are great for landscape photography. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about each of these. Feature number 5, get that blurry look with portrait mode. As you just heard, I'm a big fan of portrait mode because this keeps your subject in focus while softening everything else around them. Just make sure that your subject, whether that's a person, an animal, or a thing, is between 2 and 8 feet from the camera. Otherwise, you'll get an on-screen prompt telling you to change your distance. After you take the picture, you can actually adjust the blurriness of the background. Yes, you can adjust these settings while shooting, but it's actually easier to do it afterwards. To make adjustments, open the picture that you just took in the Photos app, then tap Edit. Here you can adjust the blurriness, the lighting effects, and you can even remove the blur effect if you've changed your mind. Be sure to tap Done to save the changes. Feature number 6, use Pano mode to capture panoramic photos. Like I said before, Pano is perfect for landscapes. To use it, all you have to do is press the shutter button, move your iPhone across the scene in the direction of the arrow, and then press the shutter button again. Feature number 7, experiment with all 3 lenses. If you're working with an iPhone 11 Pro or 11 Pro Max, you're gonna get access to the wide, the ultra wide, and the telephoto lens. The wide lens is the standard lens. The ultra wide lens lets you capture a lot more of the scene, and the telephoto lens lets you zoom in close. To switch between the 3, use the zoom icons at the bottom. Just try to avoid using zoom settings other than the preset ones of 0.5, 1x, and 2x, otherwise you'll run the risk of having poor image quality. Feature number 8, record video and take photos at the same time. Have you ever been in a situation where you're shooting a video, but you're thinking, wow, this looks great, I wish I could capture a still photo too? Well, with the iPhone, you can. If you're recording video in video mode, just tap the white shutter button to take a photo while you're recording. But what if you'd like to do the opposite? Let's say that you're in the middle of taking some still photos, but something happens and you want to start taking videos without missing anything. The iPhone 11 and iPhone 11 Pro have Quick Take, which allows you to instantly take video while still in photo shooting mode. Just hold down the shutter button, which will turn red when recording video, and then let go to continue taking photos as you were before the video. This way you won't have to switch over to video and risk losing that moment. Feature number 9, turn off the flash. One of the biggest culprits of bad iPhone photos is actually the built-in flash. Using any smartphone camera's built-in flash doesn't usually generate professional quality photos, so always take your flash off auto mode. If you find yourself shooting in low light conditions, you're going to get much better results by having someone else shine their smartphone's flashlight onto the subject, because you can actually adjust the angle and the proximity of the light. Feature number 10, use iPhone's burst mode. This is actually one of my favorite features of the iPhone. Burst mode is a camera setting that lets you take 10 photos per second, so it's fantastic for capturing rapid action like running or jumping. In this way, you can take much more natural photos. I've actually captured some of my favorite candid moments of the girls using burst mode. And when kids are involved, it's safe to expect lots and lots of movement. Feature number 11, use the iPhone's timer. Most cameras, including smartphone cameras, have a timer option that lets you set the camera to take a picture on delay. This is especially useful for those times when you're trying to get the whole family in the shot. If you don't have someone available to take the picture for you, the timer will give you time to jump into the photo yourself. It works especially well with a tripod so that there's no last-minute movement that makes the end result blurry or cut somebody out of the photo. Okay, now that we've covered basic photography principles, as well as specific iPhone features, let's get into some photography tips that are going to help you take better vacation photos. Tip number 1, include people in your photos. Human beings are strong focal points in photos. So even if you're taking a picture of a landscape or a city, having a person in the photo, it's gonna make that image so much more powerful. When you add a person in the picture, it adds a sense of size and scale to the surroundings, and it can tell a better story. Yes, you can take photos of your family members, but make sure to include yourself in some of the vacation photos too, otherwise the memories will be incomplete. Tip number 2, take photos of the journey itself. Your vacation starts the moment you leave the house, so don't take photos only at the destination. The journey in getting to the destination is an important part and can make for some great photos. If you're traveling by plane, get a window seat and snap some aerial views. Or take some photos of your kids looking out of a train window. Even simple things like riding the subway can make for great photos that will bring back memories years later. Tip number 3. Clean your lens. This tip is so simple, but if you ignore it, you can have disastrous results. Smudges on your lens can ruin your photos, so get in the habit of cleaning your lens every time you take a photo. Using a soft microfiber cloth is the best option to avoid scratching your lens, but to be honest, most of the time I just wipe it on my shirt or dress, and that works just fine too. Tip number 4. Keep your phone steady to avoid any unwanted blur. If you can't use a tripod, try resting your iPhone on a solid surface or hold it in both of your hands. You can also try crouching down and steadying your phone on your knee, or keeping your elbows against your body to keep your arms steady. Tip number 5. Try different angles. Most of us default to shooting from about chest angle, and that's fine, but it doesn't make for particularly epic shots. So experiment with shooting from different angles. Shoot from a low angle looking up for a much more epic look, or shoot from a high angle to get a bird's eye view. Experiment and see what works. Tip number 6, shoot through something. Adding a frame to the scene can immediately add interest. Instead of shooting a view or a person straight on, find something to shoot through so there's a feeling of them being revealed. For example, you could include some tree branches in the foreground, or you could shoot through the bars of a fence. When you do this, just make sure that you manually set the focus on your subject so that they are in focus and not the frame. Tip number 7, get really close up. Another twist on angles is taking some photos that are really close up. If you're shooting a portrait of someone, instead of taking it from a standard waist up distance, try a few shots that are ultra close up with their face filling the entire frame. You can also use this technique to capture tiny details of your environment, like the delicate pattern of a leaf or the intricate insides of a flower. As long as you adjust your focus manually, you should do fine with just the iPhone. But if you want to take it up a notch, you can buy a macro lens that screws onto the iPhone, which creates sort of a magnifying effect to bring out even more detail. Tip number 8, get really far away. So this is kind of the opposite of the previous tip, but you can really get a better sense of a place by taking a shot from far away. The scale of the place will be more epic, there may be a sense of movement and candidness, and since you're taking the shot from far away, you won't have to worry about whether everyone is smiling for the camera because it'll be hard to see their facial expressions. By the way, I actually have a whole video on what to do when kids won't smile for the camera. I'm sharing all my best vacation photo hacks in that video, so I'll link it down below, but definitely check it out. Just as you can buy macro lenses that attach to the iPhone, you can also buy wide lenses that take in the whole environment in front of you. Tip number 9, use symmetry. Symmetry equals balance, and this can create for a much more pleasing photo. Take a photo where both sides of the pictures correspond in size, shape, and position. You can sometimes make an image appear more symmetrical than it actually is by placing the subject in the middle of the frame. Okay, if you want 25 tips for taking better vacation photos, just click there, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.